Silhouettes of you are like a taunt. Never really know just what you want.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you've been following along, then you know that I have been on an experiment to see if I can write a book to query/editor ready quality in 3 months or a quarter. And where I'm at in that process is that I have read through my book. I printed it out and put it in this happy planner, which was actually a really awesome decision because all of my notes and things I just have in the same notebook as my story. So I have found that incredibly helpful. However, now I'm at the part of the process that is quite honestly my least favorite part. I am moving into edits. And as someone who is like the world's slowest editor, I kind of really need to streamline the process if I'm going to achieve the goal of writing the book within 3 months. So I thought I would sit down and share with you my plan of attack to get through these edits quickly and efficiently. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into what my previous process was like so that you can see how I'm changing it, and then we can talk about the actual game plan to get this book edited. So my usual editing structure always starts with a read through, which we're done with, and then I go through 4 different edits and like full-on passes of the book. The first pass is always a developmental edit where I'm looking at big picture problems and filling in any holes, changing around the plot where necessary, rewriting like huge things that have huge domino effects. Then I would move into a sentence structure type phase where I'm doing line edits, where I'm making sure it's pretty, where I'm making sure I have different sentence structures kind of scattered throughout, and I'm paying attention to not just the pacing of the story, but the pacing of the actual words and lines within the story. This is where I'm trying to catch things like passive voice, cluttered sentences, just things that don't make sense or things that I think could be written better. Usually I end up finding some continuity errors here. Once I'm happy with this pass, it's usually like a pretty solid book at this point, and I go through and do what I call a verb pass or like an atmosphere pass. This is where I will really hone in and be picky about specific words and make sure that those words match the vibe or atmosphere of the entire book and the themes that I'm playing within the book. So if it's a darker book, my verbs need to feel heavier and darker, whereas this is a adventure, romance, enemies to lovers, feisty kind of book, so I want to make sure that I'm using verbiage and words that reflect that. Then after that, I usually go through the book one more time just to make sure that I have read it from beginning to end after I've made these huge changes. If I find any spelling mistakes that fell through the cracks, I'll change them here. If I think of anything that I think could possibly make the book stronger, I do that in this pass. It's pretty much just a last looks of the manuscripts, just like, okay, is this like what we want it to be? Because literally after this, another person outside of myself is going to be reading it, so it's like, where are you embarrassed and how can you fix it, pretty much. And then after they're done giving me feedback on the manuscript, I go through and look at their inline comments and ask them questions, and I kind of just address anything that comes up after I have them look at the manuscript. And then that usually takes me 1 or 2 more rounds of edits before I'm fully happy with it. And that is when I would say, typically, I'm ready to query that manuscript. Now, that is like 6 rounds of edits, and I'm usually reading the book from beginning to end every single time. I don't think there's anything wrong with that process. In fact, I'm very happy with it. However, there's really no way I'm going to be able to do all of that within the 6 weeks that we have left. That would literally only give me 1 week per full-on edit. And while that is one way I could approach this experiment, I do want to feel like I am taking my time with each edit. So here's the actual game plan that I've come up with. Hopefully I'm not like shooting myself in the foot and this won't fall into a disaster. I don't know. It's just an experiment, and I'm really just trying to streamline the process without losing any quality. So my current plan is to kind of mush the first 4 edits all together and then send it to my betas and then work on their feedback. So pretty much what I have proposed to myself is I'm going to do a developmental edit, a line edit, and like a perfecting vibe word choice edit. 3 edits all smushed into one. I'll essentially read through one chapter at a time, and I won't move past that chapter until I feel as if it is beta ready quality at that point. There are a couple of reasons I feel like this book in particular will work really well with this structure. One reason being that I wrote the book so quickly that like I didn't have time to forget things as I was writing, so there's pretty much like a good thread level of consistency throughout the book. And I also spent a lot of time pre-plotting it, so even the things that I'm changing, it's more like pulling pieces out and plugging them in instead of full-on changing the book. Some chapters are going to need a heavy developmental edit, where others really I won't have to change at all, and I'll just be able to start fluffing them up and making them pretty and as perfect as I can. And so those chapters I will move through quicker, obviously, and then the chapters that need more work I will have to move a little more slow. But I think because I'm mushing everything into a smaller time period, like I have 6 weeks to do this, I'm going to kind of skip over a lot of the time where I just put my manuscript down and I don't touch it, and then I forget about it, and then I have to reread it. And the amount of times I have to reread a book to get through the edits is really where I see a lot of wasted time. So that is kind of the point of what I'm doing, where I'm going to read through the chapter once and I'm going to get it as clean as possible. And then once I move on from that chapter, it's basically checked off my list. I should not have to go back. Another reason this is possible is because the editing notes that I made for myself are really thorough. I definitely chose to spend my time going through slowly in the read through and the markup of the actual book. And even while I was reading through it, I brainstormed quality ways to fix issues that I knew were in the book. So I have like a full-on edit letter, and since I have broken it down into such small tasks, it really ends up being more along the lines of a to-do list that I have to just check off as I'm going through the manuscript. So the way that I think I'm going to apply this plan to my actual life to make sure that it actually happens is this first week I'm kind of not really counting. What I have currently been doing for myself is making Pinterest boards for world building aspects and different locations that I felt like I was lacking in their description. That's usually like where I struggle the most, is actually putting the description into the book. So I'm kind of helping myself out ahead of time before I start into the edits with creating these Pinterest boards pre-writing, so that while I'm writing I don't have the excuse of getting onto Pinterest and researching things. Like, we're getting all of the research and all of the visuals put together before we start the edits, because I'm not going to be allowing myself a lot of research time, because we don't have time to waste, and I don't want to fall into the rabbit holes of spending hours on Pinterest when I'm supposed to be making actual progress throughout my book. That way when I come up to a location, I'm like, oh, I need more description. Well, what does it look like? I've already thought this through. I've already done the research. I've already got a ton of visuals right there. I'll just go onto Pinterest, go onto that specific board, and not allow myself to, you know, move outside of the already pre-chosen path that I have for myself. After that, I'm really going to attack the book in a 4-quarter kind of approach, where 1 week I will focus on Act 1, the next week will be Act 2A, Act 2B, and then Act 3. That will take up the span of 4 to 5 weeks, and I've pretty much decided, because I'm on such a short deadline for myself, that I need beta feedback as soon as possible. So as I finish each act, I'm going to be sending it to my beta readers so that they can be reading it as I'm working on the edits. Then I will be left with 2 weeks where hopefully my beta readers can get it back to me like almost instantly by the time I'm done with that last act, and I can start working on the feedback of their beginning acts while they're reading the end of the book. So I'll pretty much have 2 weeks to go through the manuscript again. I tend to move through this feedback rather quickly because, quite honestly, because I spend so much time plotting my books ahead of time, there's rarely like plot holes. It's usually things that need tweaking. So I do feel confident that I could probably move through their feedback within a week or a week and a half, and that would leave me a little time there at the end to just read through the manuscript one more time and then come back and decide, is this query ready? Is this editor ready? So that is my plan. It is going to take a lot of work. It is going to require me to give as much time and commitment to the project as I possibly can if I'm actually going to achieve it. I'm definitely excited for the challenge. I've never actually challenged myself to write a book within 3 months and get it to the quality that I'm trying to get it to. I do feel a lot of positive energy and momentum for the project right now. However, there's just really not enough time in my current day. My typical work schedule has been completely flipped on its head right now, and so it feels as if I don't actually have the time to write and I'm making like zero progress right now. So I just really need to nip that in the bud right now if I'm actually going to achieve this goal. And so I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I am going to do the 5 a.m. writing challenge next week. I'm a little scared, I'm not gonna lie. I like my sleep, I need my sleep, but this is just for a short amount of time so I can actually start making that progress in the book, and hopefully the upward momentum of that will carry me through until the end. Hopefully, because we have laid all of this groundwork and we have figured out, like, we have our edit letter, we have a game plan for working through the actual words of the book, and we have a game plan for fitting it into our life. Hopefully all of this groundwork means that we are going to come out of this successful and have a book by the end of this quarter. If you are interested in following along, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you in the next one at 5 in the morning. Okay, bye!